Welcome to the family of home and professional turf maintenance equipment by BaNNerman. We're going to be discussing the benefits of aeration, scarification, and the benefits of top dressing, along with these three machines and some of the techniques that can give us a professional looking home lawn at a very affordable cost. And we'd like to go through each of these machines, the operations, the benefits. We'll be showing you some results in action and featuring some of the easy-to-use methods that maintain good standards of quality lawn. Today we'd like to go over some of the characteristics and the benefits of scarification. We have before us our 15-inch or 18-inch model here. And this unit is powered by a 5-horsepower Honda 4-cycle engine. One of the things that we're very conscious about is safety. So on the upper handle we've incorporated a safety bail. And this must be drawn up at all times. And should you trip or fall down or wish to stop the machine instantly by releasing this, the engine stops. Other safety features on the machine today are a fully guarded belt drive and a front debris shield, as well as a rear debris shield. The benefits of scarification are to remove unwanted moss. In many cases, with continuous mowing, we get a buildup of clippings, which acts like a layer of thatch, much like a thatched cottage. And this prevents the nutrients of water, oxygen, and fertilizer benefiting the plant. The best time to do this is when it is either early spring, where there is moisture and we know we're going to get added moisture, and possibly in September and onwards into the fall, where the plant has time to recover after the removal of this product. Also, we can use the scarifier to groove the ground to provide a natural seed bed. And this is very important because we've found that for the best yield and germination of seed, it is best to be soil covered. Often we don't have time after seeding to apply top dressing, which is really the best way. So sometimes it's best to groove or put small drills in the turf with this type of scarifier to provide that seed bed. And then with a slight dragging with the steel drag mat, we're utilizing the existing soil to cover the seed. The first pass I've set the machine up in will reflect what we would call a tickle cut to correct grain. That is, the grass often has leaders that grow along the surface, and we want to prune those off much like we'd prune a tree to straighten them up and have them grow and allow the grasses around them to fill in. The second pass, I will adjust the machine slightly down, so again the blade tips are not touching the soil at this time, but it will cultivate deeper into the plant structure and remove things such as moss, which can be quite integrated into the grass. And then the last pass, I'd like to adjust the machine down to prepare a seed bed. necessary to have a very good type of rake to remove that debris. Thus we have what we call a ski rake. One nice thing about the ski rake is we will work 90 degrees to that scarification pattern, and you'll see the first very, very light cut or scarification is producing a very minimal amount of debris, and this could be done just when it's a little bit warmer or drier without fear of desiccation in the plant. We quickly draw this across and then just back the rake up slightly to clear it. Now when I come the other way, this will be the medium pass in this area, and you'll see that we're just going to gather quite a bit more debris here by lowering that height of cut down, or depth of cut. Whereas when I go from the other direction, and I'll pull this way, this is where we lower the machine down to get some blade and soil contact. These grooves will provide a natural seed bed for us and has loosened the soil so that when we drag it with our drag mat, we can cover that seed. You'll notice that the greater amounts of debris at this depth. So we are now ready in this last pattern here to apply seed and top dressing if necessary, or if we didn't have time, what we would do is apply the seed and then drag it so we use the loosened soil that's in this ground to cover the seed. If we can pattern or just feel the slight little grooves that are the natural seed bed that we've just placed in this ground, we've thinned out the material to allow also the seed to fall, gain seed soil contact. To begin with, we'd like to discuss just some of the features we offer on the core tine aerator. One of the things we're very conscious about is operation safety. You'll notice on the rear of the machine a safety bail. When this is drawn up, then the belt mechanism and chain drive will allow the machine to be propelled. On the front, we offer several types of tines. This one is set up with half-inch coring tines. We do offer a 3/4-inch coring tine, a fracture tine for extreme compact soil and very stony ground, and for very fine turfs, such as cricket pitches or golf greens, a splitter tine. Now, the depth that can be reached by these tines does vary. Coring tines generally attain about 2 3/4 depth. The mini fracture tines and splitter tines will attain depth up to 5 inches. The machine comes with 4 ballast weights on the front, which may or may not be required. Sometimes aeration is achieved at the maximum depth with tines, and the biggest factor controlling that often is the moisture in the ground. And at times we have to use all 4 of these weights. At other times we'll remove the weights and use 1, 2, 3, or up to 4. The machine has on its rear pneumatic tires, which allow it to traverse along the ground whilst the tines are at full depth, and often help to gauge the depth and control of the machine and its safety. We've also allowed for different heights of people because the handles are adjustable towards the top end. One of the nice improvements that make this machine interchangeable tines are available. And one of the best tines we've found to address things like very stony ground, very compact ground, or a customer base that does not wish to have small cores lying on the ground, which you would normally have to pick up. And this is very important for contractors. Often we get into some pretty prestigious lawn areas, and aeration is something that the customer requires in service, but they're very detrimental to you leaving these small cores, which, if it's a clay-type core, could bake, and they are undesirable from treading on the lawn and a safety factor. Also, a lot of customers are concerned about them tracking into their home. So what we've developed here is the mini fracture tine. Mini fracture tine is a drop forge tine, 120,000 tensile strength. It actually is mounted so that it has a 1 degree offset to the right and a small twist, which when it goes in the ground leaves a larger opening for nutrients, water, oxygen, fertilizer, and top dressing. It also develops fissures further in the soil by fracturing that soil. So if we attain a depth of 5 inches, as an example, which is our maximum and most desirable, we could feel the fracturing and see the fissures about another 1.5 inches in that total depth. Again, no core residue, stony or rocky ground which may plug up core tines or bend or break them, tree roots which sometimes tines can get caught on and bent or destroyed. With the mini fracture tine, we have no fear of that. Again, the other benefit about mini fracturing, as I said, is with a larger opening, we allow quicker the recovery of a plant structure that's desiccated because more moisture will enter. We also allow a greater amount of oxygen into that root zone, which the plant depends on. The other situation is if we had torrential rain puddling on a lawn, which has poor drainage. That rain or that water line is very detrimental to drowning of that grass plant. So best we crack the surface and drain that water from that surface area. Also, we're using that water to feed possibly a very dry area to enhance the root zone and thus the plant there above. The unit is built with multiple added weight blocks, and in many cases we have to use as maximum many as 4. Now, if we're into very soft ground in the early spring or late fall, we would remove the weight blocks as necessary. Today, we've had some rain on this. This is a rather stony turfed area, so we're going to try and achieve the maximum depth, which will probably be around between 2 and 3 inches today. One of the other things about fracture tining is that aeration can be done a number of times. Sometimes we have to actually aerate in one direction and apply a heavy dosage of water to soften the ground, now that we've opened it, to get that water into the root zone. It's not unusual for us to actually aerate the same area up to 3 times in 3 different directions. Each time, by adding that moisture, you'll notice that the tine will attain a deeper depth. And in fact, probably we can go up to the maximum, which would be 5 inches. So what I'm going to do is a path down a very scarified area so we will visually see those pocket openings. Rather interesting that on a single pass, we're probably attaining in that very hard ground 1.5 inches. My second pass, where other passes will probably allow us to go down to yet closer to 2.5 inches. So by repetitive aeration on the surface, and we're not adding moisture today, but we would gradually get it down to the maximum depth. You can also see the widths of these openings. Unlike a core tine, we have a lovely, wide, oval opening that will allow us to change the soil profile very quickly by adding top dressing. If it was a very clay, dry soil, and we wanted to break that down, we'd probably add sand. In this type of heavy soil, we're going to be adding some compost material, which will not only feed, will level the lawn, and will benefit through the root zone by changing the soil base, which in this case is very shallow and on quite stony ground. What we've done is we've gone two passes in this scarified area to exemplify the openings we're producing by the mini fracture tine. As you can see here, I'm going to pry open, and you can just see that elongation we're presenting. Now, the deeper the tine actually goes, the wider that will be as its length will change. So here we are at a minimum depth of 2.5 inches. So you can imagine that if we were down into a 5-inch depth, this slot would be twice as long. So as we open the ground up and provide more of the receptacles, when we're going to do the top dressing in a minute, it'll allow more of that new media to freshly tumble down into the root zone. And if this was a clay problem and drainage problem, we'd probably use a sandier type material, or in fact a pure sand. In this case today, because this is a heavy, gravelly soil, we've chosen to use some compost. And the compost material we'll be viewing in a moment was achieved from a local authority. And it is a plant food, it is a soil-based material for leveling, and it will allow changing and breaking down the underside of this turf, which is the root zone, and that's what we want to do. So the benefit of top dressing is to level, to feed, and to change the soil profile without tearing the lawn all up. As we said earlier, a lot of lawns are built and after 2 to 3, 4 years, the original topsoil, it was probably very shallow when the turf was laid or seeded. The plant has actually exhausted not only the nutrients, but has in fact exhausted a lot of that topsoil. So rather than tear the lawn up and start over, we want to continuously top dress. We can top dress up to 5 times a year on general lawn areas, very light, at about a 1/4 depth maximum per time. And the benefit is very visual in leveling, in feeding, in plant density and growth. Often, too, the concern of the reduction of use of chemicals for weed infestation. If we can aerate, top dress, and overseed up to 3, 4, 5 times a year in areas, what happens is we produce a dense growth of grass which controls and reduces weed infestation and moss infestation through a natural rather than a chemical control. Now let's try and apply this material. Third, in our presentation today, we'd like to speak a little bit about our mini top dresser. The mini top dresser was developed about 12 years ago, and today we're using a compost material, naturally feeding and breaking down the soil. This material is now screened to about 6 to 8 millimeter particle size, which is acceptable for lawn turfed areas, and is usually readily available, easy to handle, easy to manage. One of the nice important thing about this type of material is it comes already with moisture. If in fact we're wishing to do a top dressing in the middle of the season or a very warm climate, there's no fear of drawing out the turf. Sometimes if we use sand, pure sand top dressing, which we do need for drainage, at a very hot climate, by placing the sand on the turf, the fear of desiccation is much higher because the sun is going to heat that sand up and dry the plant out. So today it's rather sunny and bright and rather warm, and again, with the soil conditions I've got here, I prefer this type of top dressing. This machine has a delivery drum in it, which we can see, and to regulate the depth of the material, there are a couple of ways of doing that. We have a brush that's regulated at the front, that is the distance between the tip of the brush and the tip of the roller. As we advance it away from the roller, of course, we will allow more material out. It's important that that drum deliver the material as evenly as possible on the pass so that we get a smooth and complete covered area. Furthermore, and we'll cover this when I get a little less in it, we have a rear calibration plate that wobbles. This vibratory plate calibrates the amount of material that the drum will take away. It also vibrates should we get moist material that tends to bridge in the hopper. We've placed it on 4 pneumatic wheels to make it very easy to maneuver. To stop the flow, we just raise the machine slightly on the rear wheels because the front wheel drive is what is driving the drum itself. The handle is adjustable for different heights, and we do have a lifting handle on the front for loading. I'm doing the pass where we open the soil up with that fracture tine aerifier. Let's see how we do. Done 3 passes there. Now today we're not quite putting down 1/4 inch of material, which is recommended in some cases. If I was going to calibrate the machine, I'd take it out to a perfectly smooth area. I'd set the front brush. I would take a complete pass and then measure the depth of the material. This is also allows us to calibrate, given an area versus 1/4 inch material, what the cost of that material will be. So once we place that material down, to float it in well off the stalk of the plant, because it's of no benefit laying on the leaf, we want it settled down to the throat. We also want it to start leveling the lawn area. So today we have flexible drag mat with a center pull rope. You'll notice that the mat, when pulled, has about a foot rise. The action that's created with this mat and its length causes a swirl effect, which floats the material off the plant down to the throat, to the surface, and also levels. So let's go down and back with the drag mat and see if we can level and make it disappear. I'm going to go 2 directions as a double pass. You'll see it's floating it down nicely, disappearing. It also stands the grass fiber back up. It restores that lawn area that we scarified and aerified this morning. One more pass on the outside. I'm going to do one cross-check just to exemplify the fact that sometimes a 30-degree cross-check is advisable as a finished pass. Now I'm matting this morning by hand, and you can see the trail grain. So one of the nice effects of matting is the fact that when we leave the lawn and we did opposing directions, we'd end up with a very nice patterned or striped lawn, as well as this material floated into where it should be. There's no fear of it tracking children playing on it after, or animals. Let me just reverse the mat and see if we can pick up a cross pattern to stand the grass up in the opposite direction. The mats do roll up for storage quite nicely. This mat happens to be 4 feet by 6 feet. And should be stored away so no damage.